What's up, everybody? And you must be sitting there thinking, like, wow, I can hear Hyper Highlight's voice. He must be a sellout or something. And that cannot be further from the truth. I am still going to be making highlight videos. However, in order to keep the topic of college football flowing, I figured why not make some little mini documentary videos about various related college football topics, past and present, in order to just keep the topic flowing and to keep my brain sane. Alright, highlight videos are not going away, but this is going to be a new aspect of my channel that I want to incorporate. Alright, so now that we got that done out of the way, I want to dive into 5 college football players that at one point in the recruiting process were committed to a school that they did not end up signing with and playing for. I want to look at what kind of impacts they could have had at the school had they stayed committed. Alright, without further ado, let's kick it and get straight into this. First player on this list is none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, Carson Beck. Beck, of course, was a multi-year starting quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs and set to play for the Miami Hurricanes this upcoming season. However, before he was ever committed and signed with Georgia, he was actually committed to 2 other schools, one of which was even for football. Beck was actually committed to the Florida Gators to play baseball at one point, before deciding he wanted to focus more on football and committing to the Alabama Crimson Tide on June 26, 2018, just weeks after getting the offer from the Tide. However, his commitment to the Tide really wouldn't last that long, and he would end up decommitting from them on February 4th, 2019, and he'd wind up committing to Georgia on March 3rd, 2019, just days after getting an offer from them. Beck claimed that Georgia was really his dream offer in the school that he grew up liking and had been wanting to play at since the 8th grade. The Tide would go on to sign Bryce Young instead of Carson Beck in the class of 2020, flipping away from USC, and no disrespect to Carson Beck, the Tide did not miss him one bit. He's not even on the same planet as Bryce Young. The Tide were way better off with Beck decommitting and flipping to the Bulldogs. Funny enough, Beck would go on to start twice versus Bama in his career, going 0-2, including the 2023 Conference Championship game loss. In the 2 games he started versus Bama, he threw for 682 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Still, I think Georgia ended up with a pretty damn good deal having Carson Beck being their quarterback, as he would go on to throw for 7,912 yards and 58 touchdowns, while also rushing for 254 yards and 5 touchdowns during his career at Georgia before transferring to Miami. You can question some of Beck's off-the-field issues and his intangibles as a leader. However, there's no arguing that he wasn't a very good quarterback for Georgia. I mean, especially his final year there, he was throwing to wide receivers with stone hands, and he was still able to put up pretty good stats and lead Georgia to a good season. We will see how Beck does at Miami this season. But honestly, for this next player, I kind of want to keep up with this theme of former quarterbacks that were committed to Alabama. And another quarterback that was at one point committed to Alabama, none other than Drake May. May was born and raised in the state of North Carolina, and his older brothers Luke and Bo played basketball there, while his father Mark was a quarterback for the Tar Heels, which is why it kind of came as a surprise that he committed to Bama very early in the process on July 17, 2019. I mean, it was almost 2 years before National Signing Day when he committed. However, Alabama was at the height of their dynasty under Nick Saban, and even if you have all these connections to a school, it's really hard to deny Saban himself and what Bama had going at the time. May obviously would, however, go on to eventually deny Saban and the Tide in order to stay at home and continue his family's legacy as being a Tar Heel. However, it did seem like May was pretty solidly committed to the Tide, as he'd go on to take various visits there before flipping to the Tar Heels on March 6, 2020. I'm sure there was a variety of factors that contributed to May decommitting from the Tide and flipping to the Tar Heels. I'm sure his family played a pretty big role in that and their legacy with the Tar Heels. However, I'm sure Bryce Young flipping to Bama weeks before that in the class above him played a role too. I mean, May probably didn't want to get stuck behind Bryce Young with the Tide. And in North Carolina, the path of playing time was pretty clear, as somehow it was pretty close to being out of eligibility, and May would just have to back on him for 1 year before taking over the reins. Bama would instead go on to sign Jalen Milroe in the class of 2021. Barring a transfer, May likely would have been Bama's starting quarterback in 2023. No disrespect to Milroe, I actually like Milroe, but he's nowhere close to the level of May. The Tide likely won a national championship with May Anderson in 2023 and make easy work out of it, sending Saban off into the sunset with one final national championship in his final season. As for May, he had a pretty big impact on North Carolina. Let's be honest here, some of those North Carolina teams he played for were really not that great, and May probably made them look a lot better than they were. Heck, if you want to look at this impact from a very larger scheme thing, he might have legitimately bought Mac Brown an extra year or 2 due to his high level of play, making some of these North Carolina teams look a lot better than they were. But yeah, May were going to be named the ACC Player of the Year in 2022, going to be picked in the 3rd overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft pick, going on to become a Pro Bowler in 2024. I mean, May's one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL, as the New England Patriots looking like they might have a bright future for the first time in a few years. Not that we feel bad for them, because let's face it, that Patriots dynasty was the most annoying thing on earth. Up next is Luther Burden III, a former Missouri football player who at one point was committed to the Oklahoma Sooners. Burden committed to the Sooners on October 9th, 2020, before decommitting from the Sooners on August 17th, 2021. Burden was committed to the Sooners during the Lincoln Riley era, and also decommitted from the Sooners during the Lincoln Riley era. Burden's decommitment had nothing to do with Lincoln Riley's departure, as it had happened months before Lincoln Riley even departed. Burden had instantly started looking at the Missouri Tigers and the Georgia Bulldogs after decommitting, and even was predicted from some pretty high-level insiders to land with the Bulldogs before committing to the Missouri Tigers on October 19th, 2021. Rumor has it Burden got a pretty lucrative NIL deal to sign with the Tigers, as they were in the midst of a 6-7 season when he signed with them. They even went 6-7 in Burden's freshman year in 2022, where he reeled in 45 catches for 375 yards, 6 touchdowns, while also rushing for another 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. However, 2023 was when Burden and the Tigers would really explode, as they ended up going 11-2. Burden would reel in 86 catches for 1,212 yards and 9 touchdowns. Burden truly was one of the most electric players in the country. Burden was certainly one of the most impactful players for Missouri, one of the most impactful players in the entire country. The 2024 season didn't feel like it went great for the Tigers, as they missed expectations, but they still went 10-3, and Burden still caught 61 catches for 676 yards and 6 touchdowns, while also rushing for another 2 touchdowns. Burden certainly had his fair share of an impact on Missouri, and is definitely one of the most iconic players in program history. He also proved that kids in Missouri can go ahead and stay home and still find success playing for the Tigers. As for the what-if scenario if Burden stayed committed to the Sooners, I highly doubt that this would have happened. I don't think Burden would have gone to Oklahoma if it weren't for Lincoln Riley. Let's say for some reason he stayed committed all throughout Lincoln Riley. I don't think there's any kind of way he would have signed up to stay at Oklahoma and play in Brent Venables' offense. I mean, there's no way a guy like this wants to play for Venables. No offense to Venables, but he has not got a good track record at all when it comes to offense. Up next, we got one of the best defensive backs in the NFL the last 10 years. His defensive back being safety Jalen Ramsey. Ramsey was actually initially committed to the USC Trojans, and actually committed to them on July 16, 2012. This was in the wake of the entire USC Trojan scandal, which they were extremely hampered by having scholarship limits. Still, I'm sure similar to the relationship that then head coach Lane Kiffin had with his wife, Ramsey had a little bit of an open relationship with the Trojans, where he still visited many other schools despite being committed to them. USC, however, was able to withstand this until 2 days before National Signing Day, which Ramsey flipped to Florida State. Ramsey would later claim in an interview years later that a big part of him decommitting was a result of Monty Kiffin, the father of then head coach Lane Kiffin, resigning as the defensive coordinator. Ramsey claimed to have had a close relationship with Monty. He would go on to have instant impact with the Seminoles, winning a national championship as a true freshman while starting all 14 games. Florida State could very well have not won a national championship that year without him. Heck, they barely beat Auburn in a thrilling game. If Ramsey stays committed to USC, Auburn might have won a national championship in 2013, which just sounds crazy to say. Ramsey would go on to be named an All-American in 2014-2015 before becoming the 5th overall pick in the NFL draft and becoming the 7th-time Pro Bowler. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the fence, USC would fire Lane Kiffin 5 games into the 2013 season before being replaced by Ed Orgeron to finish off the year. Ramsey surely could have helped that team out a lot. I somehow doubt he would have saved Kiffin's job. Kiffin was probably out one way or another. The 2014 team would end up going 10-4. It's a team I genuinely think Ramsey could have actually helped a lot. I mean, they had 3 losses by 6 points or less. Ramsey could have very well made a difference in such games. Oh yeah, and there's no way Ramsey lets this play happen.
Urkovici sets, loads up, heaving one deep, and it is caught!
2015 season wasn't very bad for USC either. However, they had a lot of off-the-field concerns as Steve Sarkisian was fired midway through the season due to off-the-field problems. I really doubt Ramsey would have made this team a national championship contender. I mean, the team was fine, but they clearly had a lot of issues. A lot of that started with the head coach's own personal issues. Last but not least, we've got yet another guy that was our 1 point committed to the USC Trojans, and that guy is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Anthony Thomas. Much like many blue chip prospects in Southern California, Thomas committed to the Trojans early in the process. He seemed mostly solidly committed to the Trojans before a surprising decision to visit Oregon a week before National Signing Day. Thomas would eventually sign with the Ducks the very next week. He flipped to the Ducks in part to the rise of their head coach Chip Kelly, in addition to liking the fast-paced nature and spread style offense that Oregon ran, as opposed to USC's more post-style offense. Thomas went on to have a great career with the Oregon Ducks, and if you haven't looked up a D'Anthony Thomas highlight tape, you must. Guy was one of the most electric players in college football history. Needless to say, Thomas had a really good collegiate career. He went on to record 3,186 total yards and 41 touchdowns during a 3-year career with the Ducks. Oregon finished in the top 10 in the entire country all 3 years Thomas was on campus. Meanwhile, USC's 3 leading rushers while Thomas was at Oregon were Curtis McNeil in 2011, Silas Verrett in 2012, and Javoris Allen in 2013. No disrespect to any of these guys, but they are not even close to the level of D'Anthony Thomas. Thomas easily could have elevated USC into being so much more than what they were. Thomas probably could have put up even more insane numbers, if not for the fact he had to share the backfield with quite a few studs while at Oregon, like Michael James and Kenyon Bonner. Thomas never really turned into a real stud in the NFL, but his game just didn't really transition well to the league. I mean, I don't know how you can expect a guy who's 5'9", 170 to light the league up. Although, he was one of the better return guys in the game for a minute. Thank everyone for watching, and please don't forget to like and sub for more related content. See ya.